If you're struggling with running out of energy while picking and playing awesome riffs like this one that I'm about to make up on the spot, then I know one thing for sure, and it is that you are not doing the necessary things that you need to do with your right hand in order to conserve as much energy as possible while playing riffs. This is the first idea that we cover in Riff Mechanics. The link is below if you would like to join the hundreds of other beginner amazing metal guitarists that are going through it right now. In this video, we're going to talk specifically about the right hand and how to conserve energy when picking fast and picking for long periods of time. We're not going to get into any left-hand stuff, even though it is super important and there is so many ideas as far as conserving energy with the left hand as well. And I do have a video about that you can access somewhere, maybe up above or in the links. Let's get into right hand picking and conserving energy. There are three main ideas that are very important to be good at, to understand when it comes to picking and conserving energy and using the minimal amount of energy when you actually play riffs. And that's so important when it comes to playing fast riffs. It's not as important when you're talking about rock or blues or AC/DC style stuff, but when you're talking about like Trivium and Killswitch and Bullet for My Valentine and the bands that we love, those 2000s metalcore bands, then it is super important that you're not using more energy than you need to, because you don't have a lot of energy to use, especially if you're trying to play through entire songs or even play like shows with your band or your friends, or even just play in your room through several songs in a row. If you are not doing these things that I'm going to talk to you about in this video, it's going to be very hard for you to get through even just one entire Trivium song. First of all, a lot of new guitarists struggle with this because they keep their hand up here, right? So if I have my hand up here, like this is too high, right here is too high. If I have my hand way up here, then I'm kind of essentially stretching and I'm moving my wrist in kind of an awkward position to actually get to the notes that I want to play. So what I want to do is I want my center of movement to be right, my pick essentially kind of resting at like a rest. I want my arm to be straight, I want my wrist to be straight, and I want my pick to be kind of right in the middle of where I'm picking. So if I'm picking just on the bottom string, then my pick should basically be right in the middle of the bottom string as I'm resting. But if I'm picking, you know, between like the three bottom strings, then I want it to be on the fifth string. That's kind of my spot there that my pick should be right at as I'm resting. The movement in my wrist is super important as well. I'm not moving like this. I'm not like I'm drumming. You know, that's kind of what I think a lot of us kind of drift towards, is this movement right here. So like a down-up motion, but it's not that type of motion. Most of the time, it's more of a twist of the wrist, like turning the key in a lock, but very slight motion like that. The minimal amount of movement that you could possibly do is going to benefit you, because ultimately the more that you move, the higher you pick up your hand off of the guitar, off of the strings. The more I move this way, that is all going to add to the energy that I'm using as I'm picking. And that's the whole idea, is to utilize as much energy or minimize the movement and the energy that I'm actually using while I pick. So it's super important that I'm not picking and moving my wrist and my hand more than I need to when I'm picking. There's going to be some situations to where you want to play like a more of aggressive style riff, so it might be necessary for you to add a little bit more movement or pick up your hand a little bit more to just get that momentum to hit that string harder. But overall, the idea should be to minimize the movement of your wrist as much as possible by using that sort of key in a lock sort of movement as you're picking. And another idea that comes into play is my pick angle. Like, I don't want to be picking with my pick straight up and down like this. You can see that? That's not the correct way to do it. And I think a lot of us, when we first pick up the guitar, that's kind of what you think, is you use the pick straight like this. But I want to have somewhat of a left angle, so I'm picking on essentially the left side of my pick on this side, or right there, the edge of the pick. And that's going to allow my pick to kind of drive through the strings a lot easier. And it's going to be a lot less friction between the strings as I do that. And then also, how much am I gripping this pick? I don't need to grip my pick harder than I need to, obviously. So if your knuckles are white, then you're gripping the pick too tightly. That's actually a good exercise that I have everybody do is just strum some strings, palm muted, not palm muted, doesn't matter, and just feel how tightly you're picking or you're gripping the pick, and then let off of that grip as much as you possibly can before that pick starts moving around or before it falls out of your hands. And that's really how hard you need to grip the pick. Picking technique is super important. The way you pick, that wrist movement, the pick grip, the pick angle, all of that stuff is super essential. And that's the first idea. The second idea is actually allowing my strings to do as much of the work as they possibly can, by thinking of it as like I'm kind of essentially jumping on a trampoline. My strings are trampolines, and I'm just bouncing my pick off of the strings. And that's going to allow me to conserve energy because of the fact that I'm not having to move my wrist up necessarily. I'm not having to use the effort myself to move my wrist and my hand back up. You know, the strings are doing some of that work. There's a little bit of movement, of effort that you need to put in, especially if you're picking real hard. And that's kind of the idea and the mindset that you need to have as you're practicing some of these riffs. But that's not possible to do if you're not relaxed, which is the third idea, is overall relaxation of the right side of your body, the right side of your arm, your wrist, your hand. It has to be completely relaxed, because if I'm not completely relaxed, then this motion doesn't work. It's almost like I'm kind of just flopping my wrist around, but in a controlled way as I'm picking. Something that I make sure that I do personally, and that I teach my students to do, is to make sure that you're breathing. It's really easy to hold your breath as you're playing guitar. You're trying to focus on something, but it's very necessary to breathe for that relaxation. And then something else is just to shake your hand out, and just kind of remind yourself what it's like to be relaxed. Just kind of move around, almost like a UFC fighter before he's getting ready for a fight or whatever. He's just kind of bouncing around, trying to loosen up as much as possible. Doing stuff like that before you play guitar, as you sit down to play guitar, is going to help with that relaxation. This is something that you can even do when you're not playing guitar. Like as you're driving down the road, practice that picking motion and practice that relaxation of the wrist. Just try to be as relaxed as possible and practice this that wrist movement as you're like driving down the road, or you could do it while you're sitting on a couch, or you just do it walking down the road, whatever. Anytime. You don't have to have your guitar to do this. Those are the three ideas that are absolutely essential for conserving energy when you're playing guitar, and it is super important that you utilize all these ideas and that you get your picking hand to where it needs to be as far as the picking angle, the picking technique, allowing your pick to bounce off the strings, not using more energy than you need to play these riffs, and to allow your pick to go up and down. And also complete relaxation of the right side of your body, your arm, your wrist, your hand. I put together a riff essentially like an exercise for you guys to practice these three ideas. I get people asking me all the time for one-on-one lessons, and they want to work with me for the rest of their life essentially. And I'm like, there is no guitar instructor that should work with somebody forever. Like, I have enough stuff to teach you that I can teach it to you in a certain amount of time, and then I teach you what you need to do consistently to continue to progress on your own. You don't need me to sit down with you every single week for the rest of your life. I can teach you so much stuff in just 6 weeks, and that's what Riff Mechanics is all about. And if you guys want to check that out and join today, the link is below.